Welcome to Mission Imperfect, the podcast about navigating the twists and turns of life and embracing the imperfections of the journey.
We're your hosts, life coaches Catherine and Kirsty, and our mission is to support you in finding your own path, your own way, with greater clarity and self trust, no matter how messy or uncertain things may seem.
We address the roadblocks that come up time and time again for our coaching clients, from acceptance and boundaries to values and well-being and everything in between.
As well as asking lots of questions, a coach's favourite thing to do, we'll be sharing thoughts and insights and offering plenty of tips, tools, and techniques for you to try.
Your mission, should you choose to accept it, is to grab a cuppa and a biscuit and join us in getting lost in finding ourselves. Hello and welcome to this week's Mission Imperfect. Now, this week is a really interesting topic, well, from my perspective at least, because it is all about why we keep second guessing ourselves. And if I can actually put this one to bed for myself, I will be very, very grateful. But as we always say, there are no magic wands. It's a work in progress. But the more awareness we create, the better. So why, Catherine, why do I keep second
Well,
guessing myself?
I know it's annoying, isn't it? Because even when we think we've learnt some things to help ourselves, it's one of those things that can just come back. And that's the truth of a lot of these things that we talk about, isn't it? The thing is,
Absolutely.
with second guessing, I think we've all been there. That's the truth. I think experiencing doubt is normal. Not liking uncertainty is normal.
Mm,
Pressure of making a good decision can feel high. So these are all things we've spoken about in past episodes. We've spoken about
yeah.
doubt, uncertainty, making a good decision, just decision making
Mm,
in general. But let's talk a bit about what we actually mean by second guessing ourselves. And I think the simplest way to look at it is we mean questioning a decision we've reached, wondering if we should do it, or it's maybe a decision we've already made, and therefore we're questioning whether we should have done it.
how much time do
So
we waste on that, eh?
Oh, I know. And so we actually we wonder if perhaps we're any good at making decisions at all. And it can become something of a spiral because we lose that self-trust. It's another thing we've spoken about
Mm,
before. And you doubt your ability to make those decisions, and then the second guessing keeps repeating. So it's one of those really tricky things. I think we've
yeah.
discovered a lot of the topics we talk about have this sort of unfortunate loop and consequence repeat cycle, don't they?
We seem to spend a lot of time talking about spiraling, yes. But I mean, I find it reassuring to hear this because sometimes it can feel like everybody else has got it sorted and that you're the only one in this spiral. I mean, you
Yeah.
talked about, we've all been there with second guessing. I would say more that second guessing is probably my second home rather than I've just visited. I spend a great deal of time in the place of second guessing. So
Yeah,
to
I think that's
realize
true.
that
Yeah.
it isn't just me is I always find that reassuring.
Yes, definitely. And that's the other thing, because some people listening might be thinking, oh, I don't think I do second guess myself. I normally do stick to a decision, which is great. But
Hmm.
sometimes the second guessing isn't perhaps always obvious. It can sound like, I don't know, or I'm not sure, to the point that you will think round for a really long time before you make that decision. That's an example of second guessing.
Mm.
It can start with what if, or it just might sound like resignation to keep things as they are, not risk rocking the boat, or even just breaking the status quo. That can also be second guessing because you don't want things to perhaps change or put anything at risk or upset
Right.
the apple cart. That's an example of perhaps second guessing because you think you might be better off
Yeah.
to stay as you are. So it's all very normal, annoying as it is. And it can feel quite tiring, disconcerting, a bit
Hmm.
noisy sometimes, and it is a bit unsettling. That's the truth about the second guessing in whatever
Yes.
guise it might be showing up.
Yes, I like what you said around that kind of stealth second guessing that it's the second guessing can prevent there being a decision to second guess. You're so busy second guessing yourself, you don't even make that decision. You just stick with whatever's going on. Or I suppose essentially it is a decision not to decide. But
Yes. Yeah, exactly that.
what if you did?
Exactly that.
And I think also those decisions we second guess, I think perhaps normally we think about them as actions, decisions about things we do. But I think that it can be about, the decisions we make perhaps unconsciously even and how we choose to present ourselves to and interact with others, kind of how we show up in our own lives, how we are, not necessarily what we do. Would you agree?
Yes, yeah, absolutely. I think it is one of these slightly sneaky, stealthy things and can just sort of merge into some of those other topics that we keep talking about. I think that's definitely a realization I've had from doing this podcast is how connected so many of the things are that we
Yeah.
talk about and what second guessing can look like. Let's talk about that because I think people might really identify with some or maybe all of these. So I think it can be things like overthinking the decisions, big or small. It might be asking others for reassurance. Or, as you quite rightly noted, Kirsty, it might be that you're looking for the validation, even if you're not explicitly asking for it. You're hoping someone will voice some kind of agreement or positive view of something you've suggested,
Yeah.
even if you don't openly ask for it. It might be changing your mind after you've decided something or thought you decided something. And it can be replaying past choices, thinking, did I make the right decision there? I should have perhaps chosen something different. Basically, it's all about wondering if something else would be better and wanting certainty that the best choice has been made, which is a very human thing to do, which we've spoken
Yeah.
about before. So, in those four examples, just quickly recap them: overthinking, seeking reassurance, changing your mind, replaying past choices. I thought those are perhaps four separate, easily identifiable ways that second. I mean, there's probably more, but those are the ways that I think second guessing
Mm.
can look
Are you, are
like. And I
you
thought,
second? Are you second guessing your list?
it's yes, I probably am second. There you go. What else should be on my list? But you know what? It's there. We've got something to talk about. And I thought, how many of those honestly feel familiar? And I'm thinking people listening might be thinking, okay, I recognize those because for me, I
Mhm.
think I recognize all four of those.
Oh, I definitely do. I mean, especially the overthinking one. For Christmas, my husband got me a T-shirt with the slogan, "Hang on, let me overthink this." So yes, I think it's fair to say that I'm pretty good at the first one. Yeah, got that one nailed.
Yeah. Yes, I know. It's like, yeah, they're quite familiar, aren't they? And one I'd
Do,
like
do,
to think I'm trying to let go of, if I'm, is the replaying past choices one, because I'm
mm,
not sure what can be gained from that. Now I know that's logical brain talking, and obviously a lot of the time we're engaging with emotional brain, which is telling us off or reprimanding ourselves for doing something that we now think was perhaps wrong or not the best option. But I like to think, again, with rational brain, that I made what I hoped was the best decision I could at that time with that information I had available. And
yeah,
also, I think it's come from really learning about decisions and outcomes are actually separate. Now, we did speak about this at quite some length in our decision on our episode, sorry, on decision making. It was all the way back in February 2025. So if we'll try and connect that one into the show notes so you have a real listen about that because that's quite an eye-opening realization that it's not a case of good decision equals good outcome, bad decision equals bad outcome. And you only ever obviously get to see the outcome after you've made the decision in any event. But
yeah.
that can obviously lead to a feeling of second guessing ourselves, like, oh, I should have known better. I should have seen that outcome coming.
Mm,
Um, I must learn to make better decisions. We make that kind of connection, whereas actually it's
it's
not
not
necessarily one that
necessarily.
warrants it.
No, no. I mean, and sometimes I guess we give ourselves too much credit for our power over the outcome because very often when we make a decision, that decision is not the only thing at play in the outcome. There are all sorts of other factors and other people's behavior and responses that are not necessarily a direct consequence of our decision. And that some of those things might have happened regardless of the decision we made. So, yeah, maybe we give ourselves too much credit for being able, for having the power to determine the outcome. Maybe it's not our fault.
No, we take responsibility for what isn't ours, don't we?
Yeah.
I remember someone saying that to me once when I'm we were having a conversation. I was feeling a bit overwhelmed at the time. It's a real source of overwhelm, isn't it, when we take on
Mm.
more than perhaps we should. And she simply asked me, "Are you taking on responsibility that isn't yours?" And I thought that was such a great question. As you probably all know by now, we're fans of
Yes.
the great questions.
We love
Sometimes
a
the
question.
obvious, yeah, sometimes the
Yeah.
obvious ones as well, that we do forget to ask ourselves. So let's just talk a bit about why. Why do we end up in this position where we might be second guessing ourselves? Because we've said it's annoying and we've said it's common. So why so why does it happen? And I think there are quite possibly a few reasons as to why we might enter this second guessing situation. So it could be a bit of a loss of self trust over time. So that could be things like we've perhaps ignored our instincts on something, we're perhaps people pleasing, or we're
Mm.
making a decision that just feels a bit off. We've perhaps made it not quite for the right reasons. For example, if we are people pleasing, we've perhaps put other people's needs or opinions ahead of our own. So the decision hasn't felt quite true to us.
Yeah. And then I guess there's fear of judgment as well, kind of linked to
Mm,
people pleasing. But if you've made decisions in the past which have people have reacted
yes.
unkindly to in some way, that it
Yeah. You
becomes
think,
harder to then make another decision, doesn't it?
did I really make a bad decision there, a wrong decision there? They
Yeah.
wouldn't have done that. Why wouldn't they have done that? Am I thinking about things differently to them? Am I thinking about things wrongly? And of course, it's never that straightforward, is it? You're just seeing things
Um,
differently. So that's one way. Another could be belief that there is a right decision to land on out there that you just need to find rather than just a decision. And that kind of pressure increases doubt because there's all those wrong decisions floating around than the right one that you haven't perhaps found yet. And that can result in more stalling and more second guessing. So again,
oh
you enter
yes.
that loop, don't you? Which is it can be very difficult
Loop
to
of
break
doom.
these.
Mm.
Yeah. It could be fear of consequences. So we try to predict everything. So we think what could
Oh
be all of
yes.
the possible outcomes from here. So we head off all those consequences. And there's those past experiences where perhaps things didn't go well. So we focus on the outcome that we had from our previous decision making. Think, that didn't go so well for me. I'm not so good at decision making. I better question it. And we go back into that second guessing situation. So we've got another list of four there. It wasn't intentional, but we've got so loss of self
No,
trust, belief of landing on a right decision, fear of consequences, and past experiences.
they all
And
sound very
unfortunately,
familiar.
yeah, they do, don't they? And you can
Yeah.
see how easy it is for this to happen. And just to make clear, we're not suggesting that this is something terrible that you have to
No.
eradicate. It's, as we always talk about, it's just something to be aware of because, as common as it may be, there can be a bit of a cost to this second guessing because chances are we might be feeling stuck or indecisive, like we can't make that decision for all of those reasons. We might miss opportunities. We might become reliant on others. Talk about that reassurance that we're seeking.
Yeah.
So instead of just making a decision, we feel like we have to run it by other people for their approval and backing. And then you feel a bit disconnected from knowing and trusting yourself.
Yeah. When you stop trusting your instincts, that trying to over logic things when you've got an instinctive sense, it can really create a disconnect, can't it?
Yeah, exactly. And it's difficult then, isn't it? Because you start to wonder what is a true decision based on who you are at this stage of your life. What you want, what works for you. It stops being a you centered decision and becomes one that you feel like there's some kind of recipe and formula for outside of you that you need
Yes.
to find. And that's not really how the world works. And the
No,
thing
I
is,
mean we can often feel that sense of pressure to be able to justify a decision, to explain it logically.
mm,
And I mean sometimes that's valid. It's not necessarily a bad thing, but if you've actually got a strong instinctive sense of what you want to do, and you keep overriding that in order to be able to present a logical explanation, then I suspect that sense of disconnect is just going to keep getting worse.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
probably all the other things around that sense. So that's going to be the loss of self-trust there, but also chances are your outcomes aren't going to be great if you're not doing what actually feels true to you.
Yeah.
There probably isn't going to be create quite the outcome that you want.
Yeah, exactly that. Exactly that. And that's why, unfortunately, there seems to be so many ways in which that spiral, you can sort of seem to
Yeah.
enter that spiral at many points and then compound it. And it's quite tricky. So what can we do? Let's try to
Oh,
end on
good
slightly more
question.
positive notes.
Yes. What can we do?
Because this isn't about making sure we make perfect decisions. Let's just put that straight out there because
Thank
they
goodness for
don't
that.
really exist. They don't really exist. Sorry, there is no such thing as, here is the perfect decision.
So they're right
What
up there
we
with
want,
magic wands
yeah,
and perfect decisions.
exactly,
Let
don't
go of them.
exist.
They're not,
Yes,
they're not real.
exactly. In the bin.
Excellent.
What we want to be able to do is trust ourselves to respond to what happens, to be able to handle it without blame and criticizing ourselves and move on, no
Yes.
matter what the decision actually was. Because the truth is, you've done that many, many times already. We can't, let's be honest, it's not like we can reach our 30s, 40s, 50s, and beyond without having
Mm.
made decisions. Even if we found them hard to make, even if we did go through some second guessing, we will have made decisions to date that have impacted our lives. And yes, we
Yeah.
have got through them. We might think, oh man, I wish I hadn't gone into that relationship. That was a bit doomed. But you probably
Mhm.
went into it in good faith. It just didn't work out for whatever reason. Doesn't
Yeah,
have to mean someone was to blame for that, but you've come through it and perhaps out the other side.
absolutely. I mean, to put it bluntly, so far we've all got a 100% track record for getting through every decision we've made.
Yeah,
However hard or
exactly.
painful or messy it might have been at times. And I think we often focus on the bad ones as well and don't realize
Yeah.
that there's been lots of decisions we've made that have turned out just fine. Maybe
Yes, that's
completely
so true.
unremarkable in that we haven't sort of filed them away as under the heading of you are really great at decisions, but decisions that worked.
Yeah, that's so true, isn't it? You just reminded me of when I learned about the negativity bias that apparently we have as
Mm,
adults in particular, because we experience life's knocks, don't we? That's the true thing. We will have had downs as well as life's ups,
yes.
but why is it that we do recall those negative ones so much more easily than the positive? I think we have to make more effort to remember the good things that have happened, and they will have been as a consequence of some of our decision making.
Yeah. I think that negative bias is often seen as a bit of a survival instinct. If you remember what went wrong, you're less likely to do it again and it will
Yeah.
keep you safe. So if you remember that berry that looked that particular color had a very nasty impact on you when you ate it, you're not going to do it again. So from sort of prehistoric times, that remembering of what went wrong can really help keep you
Yeah.
safe. But once you've
Yes.
learned the lesson, when you know the lesson, you don't need to keep going back and beating yourself up for it and worrying about it.
Yes. You're so right. It's definitely a form of self protection, isn't it? But maybe the protection becomes heavier than it needs to be for some of modern life's examples, where it might be something that's not connected to a poisonous berry or something like that, which
I
can
mean,
have dire consequences.
the chances are that what you're overthinking about, picking off the menu at the restaurant you're in, is probably not going to kill you, and it's not going to have a radical impact on the rest of your life, and you are quite capable of choosing something that will be enjoyable. And if it's not, you've got plenty of other food to try.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. How funny that we should come out to food. It may not have been biscuits, but at least it was
Who'd have
food. So
thought?
who'd have thought? Who'd have thought? So before we go down a rabbit hole of menus and what we'd like to eat, because it's coming up to lunchtime, we'll just end this episode with two things. One is join us next week. We'll have a coaching bite-size episode to follow up on this one, where we're going to talk about rebuilding our self-trust when it may have taken a dip, because that's so important that, it's very normal that this can happen to all of us. And it's something that we might have to revisit repeatedly. It's not a sort of once and done and I fixed it kind of situation. It happens that we
Too
have
right.
these dips, like we have bumps in the road. This is a dip that we might have in our self-trust and self-confidence.
Hmm.
So we'll be back next week for that. But we'll finish this week with a question, as we like to do. And it's, are you doubting yourself and therefore second guessing somewhere in your life more than you need to?
Oh,
Just to plant that little seed to have a think about.
I'm going to suggest that for most people, the answer is yes. So
Mm,
follow that up with where.
yeah. Yes. Yeah. I mean, it was an invitation to think of that example rather than just say yes.
So the whole open close question thing. Um, so that's it from us for this week. I hope it will help you manage your self-doubting and second guessing a bit better. And if there's anything that you would like to raise in respect of this, then please get in touch with us on social media. The links are in the show notes. And if you enjoyed this, please do follow the podcast.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode of Mission Imperfect. We'd love to hear your thoughts on any of our episodes, especially if you've had a light bulb moment in answering one of the questions, have benefited from one of the tips, or have a suggestion for an episode topic.
And if these conversations have made you curious about how coaching could help you, please don't hesitate to get in touch with one or both of us to find out more about what we offer. Until next time, keep being imperfectly you. No one does it better.